いい仲間を持ってる。さすがはあんたの息子だな。
Welcome back, Tyrants. Today, another favorite moments video. Now, it looks like we're going to have an extended break for the One Piece chapters, possibly for 2 weeks. I just saw a video on Brago's channel. If you don't follow him, Brago the Ace, amazing One Piece content creator, check him out. But he just did a video about how it looks like there's a emergency break for One Piece. It was going to be in the next issue, so we were going to get a chapter this week, but for some reason we're going on a break, and it seems like we might be going on an extended break. So I'm not really sure what that's all about. Of course, I wish Oda all the best. I hope he's in good health. If he needs the break, I'm totally fine with that. But that just means no chapter. So what I'm going to try and do is pump out a few other videos that I've been planning, intermittent between chapters. And today we're going to have one of the videos I've been waiting to do for a very long time. And that's going to be one of my favorite moments, Kuma's formal introduction into the series. Now, this isn't about Kuma's introduction with Doflamingo when they all meet up at Mirajoy. That's kind of the introduction, but we don't really get to know Kuma. We just get his name and we get his bounty, and that's about it. What I'm talking about is his Thriller Bark introduction, and mainly episodes 375 to 377. Now, I am going to be talking about some of the previous episodes, like I think a 368, 369, somewhere in that area, because Kuma shows up in a few episodes before he really gets going, and I'm going to talk about those two because those are great moments, but I'm just lumping those into the main 3 episodes. And I'm using episodes instead of chapters for this one because I actually ended up watching Thriller Bark before I read it. So when I fell in love with this moment, when I really enjoyed this moment, it was in the anime, and so that's what I'm going to be using as a reference. Now, before we dive too far into the moment itself, I want to talk about just Bartholomew Kuma and why he's my favorite character. I believe I mentioned this in the Law video, but characters that have this kind of aura of mystery and darkness kind of surrounding them, I tend to like a lot more, and Kuma has a ton of that. Kuma is tied to so many things that are oddly enough connected to the world, yet like unexplained in its entirety, that make him such an interesting character. And it makes you wonder about his motives, about his positions, like where he's been, because Kuma has been a revolutionary. He's a pirate, he's a Shichibukai, he was a king at some point. He has the epithet of the tyrant. So what is the character Kuma? I don't really think we have answers to many of those questions. I don't think we really know how he ended up the way he is now. And like trying to figure that out, trying to connect all the pieces, that's one of the reasons why I really love this character. The other reason is, of course, his power set. I think Kuma's powers are some of the most unique and versatile in One Piece. And I think, honestly, it makes him one of the strongest characters in the series to date. I think there's so much potential. I think there's so much possibility that you can do with this fruit that haven't been explored yet, and that I hope to see with Kuma and not with anyone else. I know there's like a fan theory that Frankie might get his fruit. I don't like that. Kuma needs to keep his fruit, and he needs to use it in all kinds of ways that are just mind-blowing. And so that's another reason why I like Kuma. But let's go ahead and dive deep into his formal introduction. So here we are reaching the climax of Thriller Bark. The crew is fighting oars, Nami's just escaped, Perona's trying to leave, she's trying to take the Sunny and get out of here. And essentially we have Nami and Perona having this, one-off conversation about, oh, I can beat you, the only person that could beat Perona was Usopp. And so Nami's no threat to her. And they're kind of having this off conversation, and right in the middle of it, like, not even really interrupting the conversation, but just appearing there is Kuma behind Perona. And it's such a cool scene because, Nami's talking to Perona, and then all of a sudden she just notices that there's this giant person behind Perona. And when we pan back to Perona, we just see Kuma there. We don't even see his face. We just see his body is just standing there. And everyone starts panicking. Everyone mentions that, I think it was there's two like squirrel zombies that Kuma met a few episodes before. Like, Kuma kind of showed up, they didn't really show his face or anything, he was still silhouetted, and he saw these 2 creatures and asked them a question and sent them flying. And so the rest of the crew is freaking out about it, and they tell Perona. And Perona's pretty much sounded them out by now. she's just staring at this man because she knows exactly who this is. And Perona's kind of the person that gives us a rundown of Kuma. She mentions that he's a warlord. You know, he kind of has the same stature as Moria. He's this huge man who carries this title of 7 Warlords of the Sea. And he's also known as the Tyrant. He's the man who's known of committing every cruelty that a pirate can do. And you look at Kuma, and you know, he's not yelling, he's not shouting, he's not doing anything. He's just standing there, kind of chilling. And it's weird because the aura around him is so dark and mysterious. Yet, you know, he never raises his voice. He's just the vision of calm. Like everything about him is just calm. Yet, you know something terrible's about to happen. And Perona kind of has this thing where she's like, you know what? What am I freaking out about? My power's OP, whatever. And she attacks Kuma with all her best stuff. Now, naturally, it doesn't work, but the way the scene is shot and the way the scene plays out is probably the reason why I love Kuma so much, power-wise. Why I just love the idea of Kuma's power. But we get this scene of, like, you know, her ghosts going up to Kuma, and all he does is like take his glove off and just swat. Like, no theatrics, nothing special. He literally just swats his hand down. And it's funny because you get the panel, or you get the kind of scene of him just swatting, and you get the sound of his fruit, which is somewhat comical. And she's just gone. She's just out of there. So like the scene is somewhat funny in how easily he handles the situation, but also it's like what just happened. Perona in her own right was kind of overpowered with her fruit. I mean, anybody she touched with the ghosts would instantly be taken out. You know, the only person she was worried about was Usopp. So you had this other person who we have no idea how he would counteract her fruit. You know, we see people like Zoro and Luffy be taken down by her fruit. So we're wondering, what can this guy do? How does he get past her fruit? And to be honest, we don't even know how. We just see that he does. And I think that's the perfect display of power. We don't know how he does it. We don't know what he did. We just know that he did it. Unquestionably. And it's over. You know, no pomp, no circumstance. It's just over. So everyone runs away. You know, they're panicking. They have no idea what he just did. And Nami's just up there standing. And Kuma starts talking to her. He even refers to her as Cat Burglar Nami. So he has some idea of who she is. Not only just by, you know, just knowing the name from a bounty poster, but he knows what she looks like. Even when she's not wearing her normal clothes. So that in itself is enough to be like, okay, so he knows a lot more about, you know, maybe it's just the crew that he knows about, but he knows a lot about the world in a possible sense. So we get that vibe. And as Nami's talking to Kuma, he vanishes again. And he shows up right next to her. And it's like he just keeps getting cooler and cooler with everything he does, because it's instant. And I love the effect that they use in the anime, because they have Nami talking to him. Well, I guess in the first instance, they have him talking to Nami. And he's still talking to Nami as he teleports. So when Nami's looking in the location where he was, he's already moved right next to her and he's still talking. And she doesn't notice that difference until after he stopped talking. And it's feats like that I love to see, like the incredulous speed feats that make no sense sometimes. And so he does it again when Nami's talking to him. And that's the one I really love, because Nami's looking in a direction, talking to him. And not only does she keep talking once he's moved, but she doesn't realize it until, you know, after. So she's still talking to him, and then all of a sudden he's gone, but he left like in the middle of her conversation, and he's already been moving out. And so Nami gets the idea of that man is dangerous. Like, not only does he know about me, he mentions Ace, he talks about Luffy. So he has enough knowledge to be a credible threat. He knows enough about our crew to be a credible threat. And his powers seem crazy. They don't seem explainable. And yet this man is just, you know, walking and doing as is. And that's like the Cliff Notes version of Kuma that we get in those episodes. You know, we get to see a little bit of his power, a little bit of his personality, and a little bit of his connections. And then in the upcoming episodes, we'll get deeper into that. But it's such a good condensed view of Kuma that it makes him such an interesting character just in that time frame alone. And we also have like a small intermittent conversation with Kuma and Moria. And they're talking about Blackbeard's introduction into the warlords. You know, Blackbeard just defeated Ace, and he's been instated as a warlord. He's a no bounty, a fresh name, just stepped out of Whitebeard's crew. And I really like this conversation because Moria states that So now we're going to start seeing balance again. Now that we have someone else in the Warlords, we're going to see the balance of the world. And Kuma states, I think it's going to be the exact opposite. I think things are getting much worse. And they do. Things get so much worse. So I really like that little conversation just in itself. But Kuma also says, like, I don't think we can really do much about that part of it. So he knows that things are about to get really bad, but there's so much going on at this point in time that, even he doesn't really have a solution to all the problems that are about to unfold. And so we know how the whole ordeal with Mori turns out. He is defeated, just as they expected. And when the Straw Hats are pretty much recovering from that fight, where they're kind of going through the whole role of, celebrate the end victory, Kuma shows up. And the way they bring him into the scene is so fantastic, because they just have him perched in the sunlight. They have him perched in the sunlight, which the crew has been fighting to get all night. They've been putting their lives on the line to kind of be able to be in the sunlight and, not fade away from their shadows. So to think that now they have the sun shining, you have this super imposing figure standing in the sun. And it's such a good parallel to what's happening in the story, because it's like, you get to a point where you thought you were complete, you were done. But it seems like there's something further, there's something beyond that. And you have Kuma talking to what I think is the Gorosei, to be honest. I don't think it's Sengoku, I don't think it's like Kong or anyone, and I don't think they clarify who it is, but I want to say it's one of the Gorosei. It's one of the higher up saying, because they're talking about how the balance is shifting and how things aren't going the way they really want them to. So this person is high enough to kind of understand what's happening, and high enough to make calls about who gets to be and who doesn't get to be a warlord. So this person is high up in some regard, and it kind of reminds me of when Doflamingo is fighting Moria, and he says that the order came from someone higher up than Sengoku. And I think those two kind of orders come from the same person or same people. So I think the person he's talking to on the responder sale is that same person. In which case, that kind of shows how much clout Kuma has with the world government in that sense. Where like Doflamingo is talking to him, and we know he's essentially a celestial dragon. He knows about some of the deepest secrets of the world, and he has that kind of connection to them. And now Kuma also has this connection. So what does that mean? How is Kuma that connected? Even if he was the world's government's quote unquote, dog, even if he did everything that they said, how is he that connected to where he's talking with the higher ups like that? But of course, let's get into the fighting. The fighting is such a glorious part of Kuma's introduction that I love watching it. I love watching people react to it, and I love just seeing the confusion that everyone ultimately has after watching Kuma. It's fantastic. I think the Double Dragon Bros just saw Kuma. Maybe not just, but in one of their most recent ones, they just went through the whole Kuma introduction and then went through the whole nothing happened moment. And I was waiting for that because I just love seeing anybody react to Kuma. And I love seeing the different kinds of reactions, because some people pick up that there's more to Kuma than him just being an antagonist. He's tied to more things than him just being there, him just, attacking the crew out of nowhere. And there are some people that think he's just outright evil, that he's absolutely brutal and has no idea like what actually goes on behind him. And when I first saw Kuma, I immediately had the idea that he wasn't just another warlord. And even that being said, some of the warlords we meet aren't exactly clear on the scale of like antagonist, protagonist, where do they lie on the scale of good and evil. Crocodile is blatantly, on the more evil side. He had evil goals and evil ambitions. Well, he had evil goals. I wouldn't say his ambitions were evil, but he was trying to do things in a terrible way. And we know Mihawk. Mihawk doesn't have, well, we don't know what Mihawk has, but at the most, it doesn't seem like Mihawk's evil. Now, with Kuma, the biggest factor that gives it away is kind of at the end of the episodes, but when he talks about Dragon, when he mentions that, so your son has found this crew, and they're kind of what I expect someone of your son's caliber to find. And it kind of gives you the idea that this entire interaction with Kuma is a test. Everything that happens, everything that we're going to talk about in a few seconds here, is a test. But let's get back to that fight moment. To Kuma standing up and looking over the crowd of people who just heard that they're about to be obliterated. And they pretty much have no idea what to do. They have no idea what's going on. So we have Zoro who steps up and essentially tries to say, this is going to be my fight. Everyone else stand back. Now, I don't know if we really get the feeling that Zoro's going to take this or if Zoro's going to do anything, but it's Zoro. We always have Zoro. We always got Zoro's back, no matter what. But just the way that Kuma, and this is another one of those speed feats that I love so much, when Kuma teleports into the crowd and everyone's still looking up to where he was, I love that moment so much. It's so fantastic because this is this massive man standing in this small crowd of people, and they have no idea he's there yet. They haven't even realized that he's there. And as soon as they realize it, they all like flinch and step back, and you can tell they're all scared and they have no idea what's going on, but they still attack him anyway. And then this is kind of like the first glimpse we get at his paw powers, because he hits a guy and he sends a pad through to a bunch of people, and it clears out an entire wave of people in no time flat. And we see that symbol, and I like what happens because we keep seeing that symbol as Kuma uses his power, but we don't know what it is yet. We just see that symbol, so we know that there's some kind of connection with some kind of paw, some kind of paw pad. We know that there's something there happening that he's using, but we still don't get what's happening. And then he teleports again, and this time he's behind Zoro, and they do the same shot where Kuma has moved and no one's looking in the right direction. And I love it again. I will always love that shot. I will always love when someone moves so fast that a character can't perceive what's happening, and we get to see that on screen. And they do that a lot with Kuma. But he moves behind Zoro, and this is the end of, I want to say, 375, because this is where Zoro's like, all right, this is my fight, let's do this. And I think Kuma says something along the lines of, all right, I'll fight you first, Zoro. And that's like the basis of introducing Kuma's power, introducing what Kuma can do. Now 376 is just a display of Kuma's ability, just a display of Kuma in general. And 376 is probably my favorite of the collection of the episodes we're talking about here, because this is when we get to see everything about Kuma. So we see the initial movements of Zoro versus Kuma, and Zoro uses Rashomon, which is an unsheath technique. And I think with all of Zoro's unsheath techniques, those are pretty much the fastest moves he has. Shishi Sonson, Rashomon, the moves where he sheathes and unsheathes his sword, those usually move faster than I can perceive. So Zoro does that attack, moves instantly, but Kuma moves even faster than that and ends up behind Zoro. And what's great about that is we see how fast Zoro moves. Like, that's what we perceive, but we don't see Kuma moving. We just see him disappear, and then he's just behind Zoro. And again, he uses his paw pad, makes a hole in the ground, leaving that pad shape, and we still don't really know what's going on. We just know that he keeps doing something with his hand that creates a pad field. So Zoro dodges, and Kuma does it again. And this time we get to see it. We get to see some kind of paw pad shape come from his hand and move through everything it touches. And that's where we're like, okay, so he can shoot things from his hand. He's shooting things from his hand. How does that explain anything he's done so far? Like, how does that even make sense? And none of the characters really understand, because they're still like, okay, so he's got paw pads. What does that mean? And Zoro does a few more attacks. He does a pound phoenix. I think it's a 180 pound phoenix. Kuma blocks that with his pads. And Zoro goes up for a close range attack, like direct cutting. Kuma blocks that. And so we're getting the idea that, okay, so the pads don't just shoot things, but they, redirect things? Do they block things? What does this mean? And that's when Kuma gives us the explanation of his power. And he tells us that he has the ability to reflect anything. And there's so many things about that, because one, especially when I've seen like people react to it, they all go like, that's weird. I would not like having like bear paws or cat paws grafted on my hands. I would not like that. That seems awkward. And it does look kind of weird because, he he has these giant hands and he has like paws growing out of them in weird places. And it looks weird. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense. And you even have like Robin, she's thinking in her head, you know, her own thoughts. She's got like cats and their little paws. And then we get the moment that I think is my favorite of Kuma's overall. Like, entire series, this is probably my favorite moment. Because I think it's more of just like, I like how epic it is, but it also kind of serves a purpose. But it's when Frankie starts saying, maybe we've overestimated this guy. You know, he's here, he's talking calm, all he can do is reflect things. Maybe he's not that big a deal, maybe we can still take him. And they're like off the high of just beating Moria and Ors. So they're kind of like feeling themselves up. And as Frankie's talking, Kuma doesn't even look in Frankie's direction, just extends his hand and shoots out a pad, clears right through Frankie, hits a hole behind him, takes Frankie out. And what I love so much about this scene is that it's so sudden. It's so somewhat unexpected because he's been calm this whole time. But the moment Frankie starts kind of talking trash, Kuma instantly shuts him up. And it's another moment where they do the thing where when Frankie gets hit, none of the crew realizes what's happening until Frankie's already been hit and he's flying back. So we see the pad go through him and he gets launched back. And then seconds later, we see the crew kind of realize something just happened. And we get a slow-mo of everyone looking in the direction of Frankie. And Frankie's already like, he's flying back into some rubble. But it's another feat of like, okay, so he has pads, but he's also scarily powerful. And he doesn't need any effort to take you out. And this is Frankie's front, so this is like, I can tank a cannonball with no issues, Frankie. And he gets wiped out easily. And there's always a discussion of, you know, the crew just fought Ors Maria, so they're wiped. They're wiped out. And I agree with that to some extent. I think that Frankie is still taking damage from a pad cannon. You know, that's just happening. Whether or not he has cola, whether or not he's taken damage before, that's still hurting him. Because what that does is that it's a shockwave being sent through your body. So it's gonna hurt no matter what. And we get a few more displays of just what his pads can do. You know, he reflects Usopp's Firebird Star. We also get the great moment with Sanji where he goes in to stop Kuma from attacking Zoro. And this is the first hint we get that Kuma isn't just, you know, he doesn't just have his devil fruit. Something else is up. Because Sanji kicks him in the face and Sanji's leg is hurt. And I love this scene because, you know, we have them bantering like normal. Or he's trying to, and Zoro looks up and he sees Sanji cringing and clutching his leg as he falls. And it's all done in slow-mo and you just see Sanji falling down in pain. And the look on Zoro's face it's marvelous. Because you know they have this hatred, friendly rivalry. But Zoro sees this crew member, this friend, this person that just tried to save him in so much pain. And in a way that doesn't normally happen. Because when Sanji kicks things, he doesn't get hurt when he kicks. He never does. So for Sanji to have hurt his leg kicking someone, I think that's like the final sign of this is really bad. And there's not much we can do about it. The episode ends with essentially Kuma requesting that they give Straw Hat's head in the name of everyone else getting free. And of course they say no. And I think Kuma expects them to say no anyway. And he hits him with an Ursus shock. And this is essentially a giant bomb that just covers all of Thriller Bark. An amazing move, which oddly enough, it does have a large startup time, but my question to anyone who like kind of throws out there is that who's going to stop him from making that? Like, his body is made of some kind of intense metal that you're not going to damage by attacking him. You know, he's not going to be bothered by you stabbing him with a sword. He's just going to keep making the bomb. So what do you do about that? How do you stop that? And I think that also explains how I can stand in the blast and not be hurt. Because he's not just a human, he's a cyborg. But that's what we get into in 377. We see that everything's been wiped out. You know, the Ursus shock did its thing. And as Kuma's going to retrieve Luffy, Zoro comes in. Shishi Sonson cuts his arm. And then we get revealed that he's a cyborg. Or he's more than a cyborg, he's a pacifisto. And I like this moment because all in all, I think Kuma is testing out the crew. And we get a brief moment which Kuma looks up. So I don't want to say that Zoro completely, speedless and caught him off guard, but I do think that Kuma, looked and noticed someone was coming. I don't think he was unaware that something was happening. I like to think that, because I think it's in the anime and in the manga, we get the panel of Kuma noticing right before Zoro attacks. And so I attribute that more to the test. I attribute that to seeing what can be done, seeing how far the crew has kind of come in this moment in time. And Zoro manages to scratch his arm, which I think is a feat in itself considering what Kuma is. But then we get displays of Kuma's cyborg side. We get the laser that is pretty much a prototype version of Kizaru's laser that's being implemented into Pacifista. We get kind of that durability, that explanation of how amazing Vegapunk is and how he's created these fully equipped human weapons, and how Kuma is essentially the main body for it. So it's like a lore dump on top of a character dump on top of a power dump. So, a lot of stuff kind of coming to light here in this episode. We also get a glimpse into Kuma's character as far as what it really means to be a tyrant, because when we have Zoro and Sanji kind of making that offer to give themselves up for Luffy, say, take my head instead, we see Kuma's honor come to light. And it's strange that a pirate who was known of committing every cruelty, a pirate who is labeled the tyrant, that he would be going not only so light on the crew, but honoring their wishes like this. And again, you come in our test, where he removes all the power, all the pain and the fatigue from Luffy, and he tells Zoro to take it. And he says, you have to take this in order to take his spot. That's your test. And while we know Zoro passes in the most epic way possible, I think Kuma to some extent expected him to pass, but we get another glimpse that this whole time Kuma's been testing out the crew. Kuma's been testing out Dragon Sun's crewmates to see what they're capable of. And it also points to Kuma just having so much versatility with his abilities that he can push, like we already know he can push like things that don't necessarily have a tangible material like fire, but he can push pain and fatigue out. What can't he reflect? Can he really reflect anything? That's the magic of that fruit, and the magic that kind of Oda has in writing that fruit, in that the possibilities are endless. Is there really a thing he can't reflect? How much more can he do? That's something I really want to see. One thing to note about the whole interaction is that we never see the disappearing power again. That's not shown to us as far as what happened to Prona. That's left a mystery up until the Sabondi arc. And that's another favorite moment that I will make a video for in the near future, because this is my number one. The Sabondi 400 through 405 is my number two. So I would definitely be making a video about that. But that's when we see that power. However, we do see Kuma do something similar to a rock. And I think this is the first time you watch this and you see this moment, it kind of registers as a why did that happen? What was the point of him pushing this rock out of the way? But as he's retrieving Luffy, there's this rock in the way, and he grabs it and he pushes it and it flies out of the picture in no time at all. And that's supposed to be a hint at what that teleporting or that pushing power is that he didn't make her disappear, he pushed her to who knows where. And it's very subtle, and it's not, you really wouldn't expect that as an explanation, but it's there for that purpose, and that purpose only. It doesn't do anything else but show you that he has this ability to push something really far away really fast. And you kind of have to make that connection as, when else has he used that power? And it's Perona. He pushed her away really fast. But like I said, we get to see that ability in full detail in Sabondi. But that's kind of like the summary of that introduction in those 3 episodes. That favorite moments of those 3 episodes. I really love this whole portion of the One Piece arc. Like this is one of my favorite things to rewatch time and time and time again. I never get tired of it. It's so fantastic to me. Surprisingly enough, I don't reread it as much as I rewatch it. Usually I reread through all the arcs, but the amount of times I have rewatched these episodes, these scenes in particular, are crazy. And I do have some overall thoughts that pertain to this moment. As I was talking about earlier, something I love about this is how much Oda is able to make out of something so small. When you think about the power of the paw pad fruit, what does that entail? Like, the power to deflect anything, and it's just in your hands. When you hear that, it's like the crew said, what is that? Is that even a huge power? Like, does that mean anything? And we see just how versatile it is. We see just what Kuma can do with that power. And I think there's still so much untapped potential in that power. I really hope to see it again. It's one of the reasons why I have Kuma, I want to say, as my second strongest warlord. I think Mihawk is at the top, and he always will be at the top as far as warlords go. I think Mihawk is just on another level of strength, and I don't know, just observation hockey, just his abilities in general. It makes it hard for me to see anyone beating him. As far as Kuma goes, and this is Kuma that hasn't been essentially gone through the pacification. He still has his memories, he still has his personality. So this is pre-war Kuma. Now, I think in some way, shape, or form, we'll be seeing pre-war Kuma come back. And that has to do with me and my theory that Vegapunk is a revolutionary, or at least in close ties with the revolutionaries. So I think there's more to be said about that, but we still have to wait and see on that stuff. But yeah, I see him beating people. Of course, I see him beating like Moria and Jinbei and Hancock, but I see him beating Crocodile. I see him beating Doflamingo. I don't know. It's just his fruit is such a hard one to counter. And the biggest thing is that speed. I don't see any character boasting speed feats like that. He can literally teleport. He said himself that he can push things at the speed of light. So, and of course that doesn't mean, combat feats. He moves speed of light, but as far as just basic movement, he can move anywhere instantly, and it's faster than you can perceive with your own eye. It's faster than your brain can process. So I find that hard to fight against. I really want to see where kind of things are playing out with the Reverie and what more we'll see from his character after that. Because there's more to Kuma. There's so much more. And I think we're going to see a lot more from Kuma. Seeing him in the state he is now hurts my heart every day. So I'm really kind of just clinging onto the fact that I'll get some good news from Kuma. But yeah, that's my topic on this favorite moment. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please leave a like, leave a comment down below. Feel free to subscribe, feel free to dislike if you don't like Kuma, if you didn't like the video, and have a great day. Bye.